Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Thanks, everybody. Please continue with your lunch during the next part of the presentation, but eat quietly if you can. I'd now like to introduce Colin Sprott, General Manager, Melbourne with AMC Consultants, to formally introduce our guest speaker today. Colin.
Thanks, Ian, and good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Jiao is Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the International Base Metals Mining Company MMG Limited. MMG is the overseas mining investment flagship and operating vehicle for China Minmetals Corporation. Mr. Jiao has extensive experience in international trade, investment and corporate management, and has worked at China Minmetals in various mining and exploration capacities since 1992, giving him over 25 years' experience in the industry. Prior to starting his role as CEO at MMG, he was the chairman and at the same time was in several other roles, including the Vice President of CMC, being China Minmetals Corporation, President of CMH, China Minmetals Huan, and President of CMN, China Minmetals Non-Ferrous. Mr. Jiao holds a Bachelor of International Economics from Nankai University in Tianjin, China, and a Master of Business Administration from St. Mary's University in Halifax, California, Canada. He's married with one daughter. Members and guests, could you please welcome Jerry Jiao to the Melbourne Mining Club.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your warm welcome. It's a great honor for me to be here today, and I would like to acknowledge the distinguished guests, including MMC patron Sir R.V. Pablo, Mr. Zhao Jian, the Chinese Consul General to Melbourne, and Mr. Wang Xiaojia, Councillor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to extend a special welcome to former MMG CEO Andrew Mitchell to join us today. Actually, I encountered also our previous CFO, David Lamont, at the beginning of this meeting. David is somewhere, and thank you for coming. Minmetals and MMG have been well supported by the Melbourne Mining Club with presentations in Shanghai, London, and Melbourne. I'm privileged to join former CEO Andrew Mitchell and also former China Minmetals Chairman, Mr. Zhou Zhongshu, as a presenter. There are very large shoes for me to fill. I will try my best. Zero fatalities is possible for MMG and for the industry, and we all share an obligation to ensure we make this a reality. There is a tradition in our industry that we also have at MMG, and one that I have adopted very quickly as a new CEO, the safety share. We start every meeting with a discussion of this, our first value. Today, I will do the same. I'd like to express my deep regrets to the family, friends, and workmates of Hilario Castro, an experienced truck driver at our Las Bambas mine in Peru, who tragically lost his life in an accident at site last week. We as industry share an obligation to ensure our employees go home safely at the end of each day. I will now turn to the rest of my presentation. I'd like to begin by speaking of our industry the mining and the metals sector. I'm deeply proud of mining and the metals and the contribution they make to better lives. I will mention better lives several times in my presentation. I have seen my home country, China, lift over 6 million people out of poverty in around 40 years based on the power of metals in development. 600 million people. That development was fed by the mines, smelters, refineries, and the fabricators across our industry. We have all played a part in this growth. However, we have a challenge. Increasingly, the society that relies more and more heavily on these metals is losing support for the activity that creates them. We can shrug our shoulders, but I prefer we increased our efforts to win back that trust. But I will return to that later in my speech. Firstly, I want to start with optimism, and there is a very good reason for it. Recent price recovery across most commodities, particularly those mid-cycle metals, copper and zinc, has lifted the gloom from our sector. China is a significant contributor to this price recovery. As the Chinese economy continues to shift toward domestic consumption, the government is deliberately managing the economy to sustain stable growth. What both Chinese leadership and our industry are looking for is healthy and sustainable prices that promote rational long-term investment, not the investment booms and the price busts that describe our past. We now face a new improving cycle, and I am optimistic for demand. I worry very much, however, about where the supply will come from. There continue to be a number of structural changes that are limiting our ability as an industry to meet growth demand. The ability to access new resources development, in particular, the challenges of political and social risk, is generating a fundamental shift in the economics. New projects has never been harder to fund and develop. And mine disruptions are now, unfortunately, a bigger part of our industry challenge. Even if we look at China alone, projections suggest we need a new Las Bambas every year, and continued stable delivery from current mines. 2 years ago, I heard from Oscar, the president of Codelco in Shanghai. He talked about in the past years, Codelco spent 3 to 4 billion of US dollars to just maintain the same level of production. Nothing new. So this is not possible on current projections. In zinc, a much smaller market, the tightness is even more acute. These long-term challenges are now finding their way into long-term prices. It is a great time to be bringing new zinc supply to the market. A word of caution, however. Our industry has for many years been guided by a growth model that encourages investment when earnings are expanding. This would be okay if that investment flowed directly through to a supply response. However, that is not the case. Our industry typically commits capital and the project resources at the top of the cycle, where they are most expensive and most constrained. Budgets and schedules run over and shareholder capital is wasted. The opposite is true. When the cycle turns, exploration is cut, project expenditure cease, and the capital is written off at just the time when spare capacity is available. This situation promotes boom and bust conditions at expense of long-term shareholder values. The impacts on our industry reputation, our employees, our communities, and our major customers are very real. This cyclical capital inefficiency is a fundamental question of sustainability of our industry. Indeed, industry analysis suggest that the world's largest miners have written off about 90% of the value of mergers and acquisitions completed since 2007 for a total of $85 billion of capital destruction. There is a need for disciplined cost management and capital allocation through the cycle. On behalf of our shareholder, and in particular to maintain a strong and robust customer base, this is something we must improve. Why do I care so much? Because I speak to you today not just as a CEO of an Australian headquartered mining company. I also bring the experiences from a career with one of China's largest government-owned enterprises and its leading metals company. Because with China consuming around 50 of the world's metals, almost everything, industry consuming over half of that, China copper demand is 50 of the world demand, with the power industry consuming over half of the copper, set to continue to grow. I often say to better understand the industry, you have to better understand China. Actually, it's not about China. China is just happened to be the country who play a very substantial role at the moment. Maybe in 10, 20, 30 years' time, we will talk about to better understand India or to better understand Russia or Brazil. We spent many years looking for the right opportunity to create MMG. By the way, we want to call ourselves MMC, and then we realized we got a mining club there, so we call ourselves Group rather than Corporation. When I present, actually this is a picture not drawn by myself, otherwise it looks a bit, this is myself standing there. And Andrew Mitchell during that time got only one lunch time to talk to us. So we have to set up everything at the restaurant. And so many years passed, I'm still not quite sure what attracted Andrew, is my presentation or the Chinese cuisine, because I know Andrew is a great lover of Chinese cuisine. And we started, to prepare the creation of MMG. I became part of MMG team from the start as a board member of MMG since its creation and the chairman of MMG before becoming CEO. A belief in local and experienced management and support from a longer-term, through-the-cycle investor in China Minmetals is at the heart of MMG's success. Our unique structure enables us to invest counter-cyclically and deliver projects early in the cycle. Our assets, Rosebery and the Dugald River in Australia, Kinsevere in DRC and the Sepang in Laos, and the Las Bambas in Peru, are the heart of our business. Las Bambas is the largest new copper project commissioned this decade. There was nothing easy about the project. Construction was 50% complete, behind the schedule, and we were its third owner since construction commenced. It had a cost plus construction contract. It was a remote site with major changes to scope, logistics, and community. The community living on the mine site had not moved to the completed but empty purpose-built town. Construction was occurring amongst the roads, school, farms of the Ferrabamba community. When MMG acquired Las Bambas, we had no experiences in Latin America, but we had our trust in our model of international mining expertise and the retention of strong local management. We also had the support of long-term JV partners to see us through. The result is outstanding. We delivered ahead of time and the budget with a world-leading ramp-up. We produced over 330,000 tons in the first 12 months and aiming toward 450,000 tons this year. Importantly, we commenced production at Las Bambas during a challenging time for many global copper miners. We expanded at a time of industry contraction. We invested at a time others were withdrawing from project development risks. We put huge trust in the leadership of MMG, the people of Las Bambas, the local communities, and the government of Peru. We have so far been rewarded with an outstanding project, and I'm greatly indebted to all who have played their part. We have also now pleased this approach in zinc with construction of Jiao River, reaching completion and looking ahead to our Isaac Corridor project in Canada, which offers further opportunities. The development of Jiao River near Kankari in Queensland's Northwest Minerals Province is a very different project with the same rationale as Las Bambas. We committed to this project at a time of low zinc prices and a poor investment environment. We had an approach in China which is always try your best while planning for the worst. When Andrew came to Beijing to seek final approval for Jiao River, we saw the opportunity, but still spent a full day with the board discussing how we can cope with the worst. During the time, zinc price was around 70 cents per pound, and we are looking for something $1.10, $1.20 long-term zinc price. It's not easy, and eventually Andrew said, yes, we actually assessed everything, and we believe we are going to make it. We made the decision to proceed. When we approached the Western banks, they were less than enthusiastic. But again, we drew on our own faith in the commodity price outlook and brought along partnerships banks, in this case, China Development Bank and also Bank of China. Result, the production of first concentrate at Jiao River this year, earlier than scheduled, is perfectly timed coming to the market at a time of tightening zinc supply and rising prices. We also saved significant cost on the project. We accessed A-level team, contractors, and competitive prices in a construction and investment downturn. This is as we predicted, but few believed the story, let alone invested against the belief. Funding support, market understanding, and a long-term view from China was critical to this decision. Our crystal ball for MMG and China is not more accurate than others, but it is smaller. This is an example I always like to use. So everyone got a crystal ball to tell the future, but it's a matter of how much you know the fundamentals. You know better, the ball at your hand is smaller. You can see back and forth, up and down, and you can see most part of it. But if you have little information, your ball may like this. So you can see only part of it. As a result, I believe we can see the whole of the story, risk and opportunity from all sides, rather than seeing only part of the ball. This view can also provide a major benefit to our minority shareholders. These investors are able to invest alongside a major shareholder that has underwritten the balance sheet for this counter-cyclical investment. The question that you may ask is how we have done this when others have not. This is all possible because we have the confidence of and in China. China is a country much analyzed but often very much misunderstood. Many analysts look for simple explanations, but the answers are normally very complex. While China has an ability to exert central control over macroeconomic factors, its commercial sector is diverse, innovative, and very willing to take risks to invest. China is transforming its domestic economy through innovation, accelerating development of emerging industries and reimagining traditional industries. Quality of life is a huge deliverer of this quality of life. The crackdowns of environmental emissions and the corruption are about readdressing imbalances. Actually, the current environmental auditing in China, it's a very good supporting factor for the zinc prices. Harmony and collective belief in our nation is an important part of our development. Where new industries are developing, China is a fast adopter and a willing investor. Based on China's dominance on solar panel manufacture, I have little doubt that electric vehicles will take off in China well ahead of the rest of the world. Maintaining employment, housing, and economic growth are far more than economic factors in China. They are the fundamental building blocks for our society. On an international level, China has always been a nation that has embraced the trade. The One Belt, One Road initiatives in China is China returning to its trade-related international policy role, and China is reforming its government business sector at the same time. Like most developed countries, state-owned corporations play a big role in national development. That was equally true for the telecommunications, energy, infrastructure, and transport sectors in Australia. When development turns toward domestic economy strengths, those state industries transform to commercialization and new international opportunities. This is now happening in China. The macroeconomic outlook is now above short-term expectation. Consumption of base metals is strong. Stable and sensible growth is expected in 2017, a target of 6.5% GDP growth for the full year. Exports increased by 15% when compared to 2016. As a nation, China is now the most significant source for foreign direct investment into emerging mining regions, including Africa and Latin America. China's model is shifting towards sustainability, international competitiveness, and a returns focus. China still needs the reliable resources to support its growth, particularly in the commodities in which China is short domestically. China Minmetals Corporation and MMG are at the forefront of this change. Minmetals has been selected as a pilot program for SOE reform, the only one in metals sector. This is in part due to the success of MMG investment model and the delivery of Las Bambas and Dugald River, demonstration that China can deliver and operate world-scale international mining projects and deliver value. This has now positioned MMG as a preferred vehicle for foreign investment, direct investment into international resources, investment in China short commodities. To return to my opening comments, the question for us as an industry is whether we will change our growth and investment model. We are now at a different point in the commodities cycle. Demand will likely be more sustainable, price and the cycles less dramatic. We are now in the second cycle following the super cycle. Base metals demand focused and value, not volume driven. New regions for investment are likely to be the One Belt, One Road countries and the south of the equator regions, such as Africa and Latin America. These regions are relatively underexplored, but they need infrastructure, courage, and a long-term view. Effectively managing political and social risk will be critical. In this, Australia has a unique advantage in the southern hemisphere, but with the democratic stability and well-understood geology. We are proud to be opening Australia's newest mine this year, we hope this is not our last. We need to find the right growth and do it differently, sensitive to our shareholders, and with an eye to the mutual success to our customers. We also need to win back our legitimacy as an industry. We are deeply proud as miners of our contribution to economic growth and human development. And in my role and career, I clearly see what metals and mining means to local, regional, and national development. We need to stand up better for the benefits of metals, and I support the efforts of the ICMM and the national mining bodies to take this story to the community. MMG is committed to being an active supporter to our sector and to delivering the opportunities that a long-term major customer view delivers. I will again like to talk about the better life. Actually, we are now in the changing world. Everything is changed every time. And I guess there is only one thing that got never changed. And that's the human being's desire of having a better life. So we always like a better life. So as I said, this is not about China only. So when we committed to this industry, we look beyond China. And I believe some other countries like India, Russia, Brazil will catch up anyway, anyhow. And we are talking about a really long-term sustainable business. So we know that we cannot do this alone, and I thank you for all you listening to me today. Thank you.
Well done, Jerry. Thank you. I'll just make a brief announcement.
Thank you.
Now we have time for a few questions for Jerry today. So if you have a question, please put your hand up or stand up and attract one of the roving microphones from Richard Shoddy over here or Gavin Collery. Please state your name and your affiliation, and we'd appreciate it without the speeches. Just the question would be great. So I believe we've got one from Richard. Thanks.
Jerry, Richard Morrow for Bailey Holst, and thank you for your presentation today. One Belt, One Road is attracting a lot of interest and a big talking point in Australia at the moment, and I understand we've got representatives of One Belt, One Road Australia here today in the audience. What do you think the flow-through effect will be on metal prices as we're going forward, and how can Australia play a major role in that?
Thank you very much. Actually, One Belt, One Road is a bold economic growth program initiated by China, but actually it's not only China, it's actually the whole region. And it may linked with $1 trillion investment opportunities. And also along those regions, we have about 60 countries and 4.4 billion people. And to my understanding, the key point of that One Belt, One Road initiative is actually the infrastructure and the connectivity. So I believe the metals like copper, zinc, other things will be the most beneficial metals among this program. So this is a very good news for actually the audience today in this room. And also China is not only to develop such a kind of strategy, China also encourage the enterprises in China, not only the state-owned, but also the private companies, to go to those regions and to put their money to invest. And not only to encourage, but also China is trying to provide some financial support. So you can see that's why the AIIB was established. And also we have many like Silk Road funds and other funds established to help the investment financially. So this is not only for the benefit of the local growth in the region, but also back to China. This is a very good approach for China to grow China's economy. Actually, China is changing. As I said, China is changing the way from previously to pursue the speed and scale Nowadays, China is more, try to see the equality and sustainability. And China need to grow to cope with the issues associated with the previous development, like overcapacity and other environmental issues. So China is believed cannot only rely on itself, so they need to develop some regional or even bigger economic activities, making sure China and the whole world can benefit from that program. Thank you.
Dave Clark from GHD Advisory and Director of the AusIMM. Thanks very much, Jerry, for your presentation, and clearly exciting times for MMG. Just interested, you touched base on risk and opportunities, and you showed that infographic showing the top 10 business risks for organisations in the mining sector. Is that consistent, I guess, with MMG's risk profile in general? And number 3, I think, was around productivity. How's MMG capitalising on opportunities within the productivity and efficiency space, please?
Yes, we are now facing a very different market. As I said, we all experienced, like the bigger names, they all publicly make that clear that they will put copper as their top priority, and that means the M&A activities will be very much competitive, and also it will be getting more and more difficult to do some I call that clean deal, if we cannot call that easy deal, but it's clean deal, like 100% cash and 100% ownership. But nowadays we feel we may need to be more innovative and to be more partnership oriented, like try to squeeze as much as we can the synergy, and also the benefits we can squeeze from the partnership. At the same time, we also talk about we are not doing deal for the sake of the deal itself. We are more value oriented, and again, as you mentioned, very absolutely, we are now doing something internally to making sure we are ourselves more competitive and more productive. Actually, when I came in from February this year, we've done a lot, and with the help of my colleagues of the group office, we run some efficiency review and also some similar approaches on site, and we identified some really good opportunities to both save ourselves the cost, but more importantly to making sure we can operate more effectively. Thank you.
Simon McKenna from PwC. Jerry, thank you very much for your presentation. Each year we produce a global mining report that analyses the top 40 global mining companies, and the requirements are that they have to be listed and in the business predominantly of mining. And one of the observations we've seen is the rise of Chinese companies on that list that now comprise about 12 of the top 40. And part of that we've observed as well is, as you've said today, the difference in investment mentality. I'd be interested in your perspectives on that correlation, and also your crystal ball as to whether or not you see that going on in the future. Thank you.
I think that's a nature of the growing economy, and we talk about some other examples, like 20 years ago when we look at the top 10 banks in the world. We basically see like 4 to 5 from Japan and another 4 to 5 from US. And nowadays, when we look at again the list of the banks, we see probably 4 to 5 from China. And that's simply the, China is at the stage to growing its economy in general, not necessarily only for mining, actually for other businesses, or even including the internet-linked business. So mining is in particular a good example, as you mentioned. China is very much like to secure the supply of the resources China short of like in particular copper zinc, and somebody also looking after nickel, and iron ore is another example. So China doesn't matter, it's a state-owned and a private company, they're all very keen to go out. Actually, this go out initiative is not it's asked by the government. It is really the decision based on the understanding of the economy growth, because we truly believe China needs those resources, and we'd better to go out early. Taking our example, we actually go out of China far before the other companies. And Minmetals is actually the first company to do the international business for the new China back to 1950. And I believe that trend will continue. And the only matter is when you go out, when you compete, and how you can build up your resources and your capability. And that's why we feel we have this MMG platform, and we have a very good talent pool. And many people ask me when you are going to think about to relocate maybe the headquarters. I said at least I will stay here for some time as this most livable city. But indeed, Australia, Melbourne is a good city to attract a lot of talent people from the worldwide. And I believe that trend will continue. Thank you.
Philip Griffiths, Monash Mining Engineering student and student chapter president. As a Chinese business executive who recently moved to Australia in your role as CEO, what are some of the surprises and challenges you faced in coming over here, and how did you manage them?
Thank you. That's a good question. And actually, I don't see many surprises. As always, people like us, we travel around the world and experienced a lot of differences. But indeed, I'm really, happy that I can have this chance to appreciate further the culture differences. When I started in Canada, actually, the courses I like the most is the culture differences, because you can learn basically accounting, corporate finance anywhere, but the culture differences is only when you be there closely and you can know it. And I feel to appreciate the differences is the way for you to better communicate, because I feel I encountered so many occasions by myself or to see others. They talk to each other, but they don't communicate. They hear from each other, but they don't understand each other. And we all serve each other one way or the other. So to better understand the other people and the other side, and the better you can serve the other side. Actually, it's not about what you can offer. It's about what is the demand. And let me share something with you. I born in China, and for a long time we've been told some stories about Western world, and I believe you must have some similar story about China or Eastern countries. And one of them, I can call it bias. It says Western people never work overtime. And also a very vivid story told that some workers repair the road and they look at the watch and 5 o'clock and then, okay, leave it, just go home. That is not happening here. No. And also, there's so much differences, between East and West, and even in Australia. I feel Australia is a big country and also a diverse country. 2 weeks ago, I went to our Diggle River site in Queensland. And the first thing is I realized how big Australia is, because I fly to Brisbane overnight and then took another 2 flights to Montisa, Kankari, and then busing to the site. It's really a big country. And then I realized how different Australia is. In the evening, after dinner, I take a beer and join a table with our colleagues. And suddenly one gentleman asked me, Jerry, so how you feel, who will win the game this weekend? that is the time, it's not the grand final, it's semi-final. Without a second thought, I said, well, probably tiger. And then the gentleman looked at me, what is tiger? And somebody with me from the group office said, Jerry, you should say cowboy. So you can see there's a lot of differences, but as I said, to better understand those differences and can allow me, especially as a foreign executive, to come in and to serve my colleagues and to serve my customers. Thank you.
We might draw it to an end there, I think. Okay. You've been on your feet long enough.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Look, I think we might draw the questions to a conclusion at that point. Thanks very much for all those very fine questions. I'll just introduce briefly Lorraine Meldrum, CEO of Swan Global, to offer a vote of thanks.
Today we have heard from a man who has an admirable goal, that of taking MMG to be Asia's largest listed copper miner by output. With the plan firmly in place, we will see continuation of its strategies. What is interesting with this Chinese company, there is no line drawn between China, MMG's home country, and the rest of the world, particularly when it comes to the people it employs. Take Jerry's predecessor, Andrew Michelmore. He had been at the helm since 2010. Today, MMG has managers who have been in Australia for a long time, as well as mining talent from Brazil, Canada, and South Africa. MMG under Jerry Jiao will be a truly international mining company. He and his company, MMG, which is listed on both the Hong Kong and Australian stock exchanges, are ones to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Jerry Jiao, the new head of MMG in Australia.
Right, thanks, Lorraine. Just some very final bits and pieces of housekeeping.